Hi, we're back for Nar Shalom and the Chabura, and we're looking at Hilchot Pesach now. Pesach is about 2.5 weeks away, give or take, so we got to get busy. And Rav is telling us that the day, the Kodem Leil Arba Esrei, the day of the 13th, we are going to sweep and mop and clean the house and check the cracks for chametz, for any leavened material, cakes, breads, etc. We are commanded not that we should know chametz in our house, because we had to eat unleavened bread when we left Egypt, and that's a commemoration of that event. And you should know, if you look at the structure of all religions, they are based on the commemoration of various events that we consider supernatural, miraculous, and we institutionalize them. Religion takes the event and institutionalizes it into a commemorative experience that we're going to have over and over every year. And that sounds like, well, it's a convenient way to build a religion. Yeah, you know, good things, big things happen, and you build your religion around it. But in Judaism, we take it a little further. We're defining the events not just as special moments that happened in the past, but they are moments that are woven into creation, and therefore they're coming back every year. That there was a change in the spiritual nature of creation by the Jews coming out of Egypt, by the Jews going into the land, by the sea splitting. That impact of those events is worth commemorating unto itself. But to make a religion that people are going to follow for 3,500 years, it's got to have a little more power. And so that's where Kabbalah comes in and teaches us that these days, like Pesach, the night of Passover, you drink 4 wines. You're not just drinking 4 cups of wine. You're getting 4 aspects of mental power in your mind that you'd never had before. And it's coming back every year. That this new power of God is constantly emerging into the world, and it needs a place to fall, and the place it wants to go is inside your brain and in your heart. Okay, so even if it comes to something simple as sweeping your floors and checking for chametz, that helps us get a sense of what it must have been like packing your bags to leave Egypt. You don't have time for bread, you don't have time for anything. Of course, the rabbis teach us that the checking for chametz is also the idea of checking ourselves for arrogance, to check where our ego is a little bit out of shape. And so that's something that everybody has to do on their own. And the act of checking for chametz is a bit humbling, because you're supposed to get on your hands and knees and walk around the house, crawl around the house looking for crumbs. I mean, it's not a very honorable activity. And the kids are wondering, what's Dad doing? But that's the point. That when you can generate a question in your children about what you're doing, then you're making a relationship. You're creating context together to speak and to learn and to share ideas, which is really why we're doing this, to pass this beautiful religion on to the next generation and the next. Okay, so we need to check the places where we could have had chametz. The big place usually is in children's clothes and children's backpacks. And I found a few crackers in my suits before too. So we want to do that, and it's again with this idea of checking myself. Where am I a little bit out of line? Where am I a little too proud? Okay. So those are some of one thing that we do on the day of the 13th, on the night of the 13th, going into the 14th, and we use a candle, only one candle. We don't use a flashlight. If you have no candles, Rav Avadia says you can use a flashlight. But generally, we're not short on candles in our generation, thank God. But you can imagine a time where there were no candles, or one person had one candle for Shabbos. It's a different reality where we should be blessing God every moment for the ease and the comfort we do have. Okay. There are some people that carry a feather to sweep around in the cracks, and a plate. And then people gather up the pieces of chametz that you find, and then we're going to burn them tomorrow, the morning after, okay, Erev Pesach. And this checking, we don't do any work. From the moment that we begin the checking, we don't talk about mundane things. We don't do any other work. We don't sit down to a meal. We do the checking first. And this is a general thing in Jewish practice, that we put the mitzvah before our own pleasures. And I don't think that's too hard to understand, because if we put our pleasures first, you might see that the Seder doesn't work out too well. Okay. And there's a blessing we make on the Bidika, Asher Kedeshanu Mitzvotav Vitzivanu Al Biur Hametz, on the burning and the separation of the leavened matter. Because, of course, this material is going to be burnt afterwards, so that there are no Hametz remains in our boundary. In other words, in your house and in your yard and in your chicken pen, and where you keep your goats, and all these things are actually very active halachot here in Eretz Israel. And I guess if you had a goat on the top of your penthouse in Manhattan, you'd have to also check his pen, Tuvia. Anyways, it's a great time. It's a time of coming together after the whole week of the preparation of Pesach. For Pesach, the Bidika is like the end of the cleaning, the end of the whole process of preparing ourselves to leave Egypt, to leave those places of Egypt inside. Okay. So that's a couple of halachot that we're going to come back to, and that we're going forward also, that the Rav, there is a formula that we have to remember after the Bidika, and it says, Kol Machamira, right? The Chazete, the Lo Chazete, right? Any leaven that I've found or have seen or not seen, it's canceled out. Now, the Bitul means that the human being has the power with his speech to make the thing as if it's not there, as if it doesn't exist. And we're gonna do that again in the morning with this declaration of the annulment of the Chametz. But it's an important idea also to remember that we can change reality by our choices. And especially when we choose mitzvot of Hashem, because we're saying, this world is not enough. We need something bigger. We need a God that knows what's going and what's coming and where we're headed. Okay. So we'll continue tomorrow with more halachot of Pesach, God willing. We're going to go into where we've been learning before in Likutei Moharan, in the Torah Hey, the second section. We're in the 14th paragraph, Yud Daled. They're all numbered. And this begins like this. Now, I entitled this Shira, The Critical Mass of Faith. You have to understand, in science, there's this idea of a critical mass. That mass has power in relation to itself and to other mass. And when you have a collection of power together, there are levels of retroactive energy. If you bring together a certain amount of wood, you'll get a certain heat in your fire, right? And if you bring a certain amount of electric wires together, you're going to get a certain amount of voltage that's going to show up. So there's a place where the mass changes, where it becomes more powerful and its impact is more noticed, right? So let's keep that idea in mind with what the Rebbe tells us, that Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, and Shmini Atzeret are all aspects of faith, right? We keep these festivals with faith that these events happened, and the rabbi said, okay, these were holy events, and we need to honor them and commemorate them and observe the festivals as we are commanded in the Torah. And the Rebbe begins, Ki Rosh Hashanah hu bechinet tikun emunah, that the beginning of the year, Rosh Hashanah, is the beginning of the repair of faith. In other words, repairing our faith means taking my faith in fallen things and putting the faith in the real thing. And this beginning, it says, Tehillim, David said, Af b'munatcha b'kachal karushim, that even your faith is in the gathering of the holy people. So faith, every person has a piece of faith. But when he gathers into a group, and so your faith and my faith and Tom, Dick, and Harry's faith, all of them are mixed together and joining together when we're together. And so those faiths gather power and strength by us being together. Assumedly that everybody has that same mindset. Ki az nitkabsim kol hakehilot hakedoshot, because on Rosh Hashanah all the holy communities gather together. Va'al yedei zeh nitlaktin v'nitkabsin kol Likutei Moharan. And through the people gathering together, there is gathered and brought together all the portions of faith in each individual, and they are joined together. Bechinat af emunatcha b'kahal karushim, right? So when you go on to in a gathering of holy people, you enter a surge of faith of those people together. And by doing so, this fixes our mind and the alignments of our mind and the way we think and the way we process information. When you have faith, you process information differently. Rosh Hashanah, Rosh Daika. This is specifically the beginning of the year, because that's the big. You get a new brain on Rosh Hashanah, is what he's saying. You get a new mindset. And this is also connected to the five senses that are working in conjunction with the brain. The five senses, of course, sight, smell, taste, hearing, and touch, all are connected to the brain. And all these senses are gathered together in Rosh Hashanah too. Well, because we're carrying them with us. There are five senses to the brain. And he goes over them, just what we just said. And all these powers, the fact that your ear works is not because your ear is so special, it's because it's connected to the brain. No brain, no ear. Right? Each of the senses is dependent on the brain's functioning. That's why when you don't feel well, you hear differently. Or when you when you're sick, you don't see as well. And these things are because our brain and our senses are totally linked together. And if something is in the way, then the sense is going to fall off. They're all there at the beginning of the year. That's because that's the Rosh Hamochin, the beginning of the head, of the mental power. And this mental power that comes into the world in Rosh Hashanah, it continues the whole year. He goes on to tell us now, the scent of sight, seeing, this is an aspect of the Pasuk that says, Tamid Einei Hashem Elokecha Ba. That always God's eyes, our God is, your God, Ba Reshit Hashana Ad Acharit Shana. That always God's eyes are on it. Of course, that means Eretz Yisrael, from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. And the Pasuk emphasizes this yearly cycle of God's presence. But Rosh Hashanah nidon ma'yeh b'sofak. And the Rosh Hashanah, there is even that what's going to happen in the end is being judged from the beginning. Rosh Hashanah ro'im mashkiach al kol Hashanah. As we said, from Rosh Hashanah, Hashem is overseeing the entire year. Ma'yeh b'sofa. What will be at the end? And this is an aspect of the sense of sight. This idea of seeing the end of the year from the beginning. In other words, sight is a physical sense, but there's a spiritual quality that you can imagine something far into the future, even though we're a long way from there. Okay, the next sense, the Rebbe goes, Shmiya hu bechinat ma she'Hashem yitbarach shomer kol tza'akot tefilot utruot amo Yisrael b'rachamim. So the idea of hearing is that Hashem hears the voices of the cries and the prayers and the shofar that's being blown with mercy. Okay, so the mercy of the hearing, it's interesting because hearing we associate with the heart. Seeing we associate with the mind. Of course, they're interactive and integrated. They're active, integrated, but they still function separately in a sense. And so Shmi'ah, it goes straight to the heart, and therefore we understand, like we had just earlier in our learning, that when the God, Rebbe Alexandri says, right, that Lo barat et ha'ra'am ela liyasher et ha'kmimiyut shebelev, right, to straighten our heart. That's why God created thunder. Well, thunder is enters the heart through the ear, right? So the ear is also being fixed on Rosh Hashanah, this idea of God hearing our prayers, and faith in that God hears our prayers. Now, reach ze bechinat. Now, the third sense, scent or smell, the Rebbe brings, v'arichu b'yirat Hashem. You will scent, your sense of scent will have fear of God. In other words, that awe carries the power, scent carries the power of awe. That when you smell something beautiful, something unique, it elevates your mind, it opens your consciousness. This is the idea of Yirat Hashem. Okay, and he brings a pasuk to support this. V'chein tein pachtecha Hashem Elokeinu al kol ma'asecha v'ematcha al kol ma'asher barata. And this is in our prayer, that we ask Hashem to give fear and awe al kol ma'asecha, on all your creations. V'ematcha, and EEMA is another level of fear. It's greater, and so it has more of the connotation of danger. Al kol ma'asher barata, on everything that you've created. That everything should have a little capsule of fear with it, right? Whether it's the neighbor's dog, or it's the person who's going to go commit a crime, he should have a little fear. Maybe that'll stop him. So we're praying that people get that little bit of fear on Rosh Hashanah. And he brings also from the pasuk, V'asei li mat'amim kasher ahavti. When Yitzhak Avinu told Esav, he said, make for me a tasty dish that I liked, right? Because of course Yitzhak Avinu, he's a very old man at this stage in the game. He doesn't see well, but he still smells food, and so that's why there's a reference here to the idea of taste and smell. Bikudim da'aseh, and the rabbis come along and tell us from the Zohar, that this is actually the positive commandments. Aseh li, when Yitzhak says to Esav, make for me, or he also says to Jacob, right? He's saying, according to the Zohar, do for me the positive mitzvot. All the positive mitzvot, there's 248 positive mitzvot, action, deeds that we do because Hashem asked us to do them. That even on the first day of the year, God can taste from our good deeds that are going to come later in the year, which is a nice idea. He's looking forward and seeing the good we're going to do, and that's going to help him judge us favorably now. So that's a beautiful understanding here, that Hashem is not bound by time like we are, so he can look forward to the good we're going to do and put it on our register early. Why not? Get a little credit. And that's this idea of God tasting our good deeds. Now touching, the sense of touch, is of course mostly with the hands, as it says in Masechet about Avodah Zarah, Yedehem v'lo yemishun, that they have hands but they don't feel, right? Because we talk about they create 8 idols that have eyes but can't see, and ears that can't hear, and hands that can't feel. Those are about idols. But we hear the connection here in the verse itself is between hands and the scent of touching. Ki mishush hu biyadayim, right? As we said, v'zeh b'chinat sheyado p'shuta lekabel shavim mirosh Hashanah ad Yom Kippurim. We are told in Masechet Rosh Hashanah that God's hand is open to receive returnees from the beginning of the year until Yom Kippur, 10 days, God set aside, where his hand is open, he'll take anybody back in tshuva. Because there's times where God won't take a person back in tshuva. And if somebody's experienced that, they know what I'm talking about, because it's like you actually want to get close to God and you can't. You keep falling and you keep being pushed away and you feel like the world is against you. You feel like even God's against you. No, God's not against you. There's just set times for things based on innumerable calculations that we can't make. But we have to have faith that eventually he will, and he gave us Rosh Hashanah to Yom Kippur for that time. So even if I feel like, I can't do tshuva, every time I pray, nothing happens, negative, things like that. Well, we have to understand that there is a time for tshuva that it will be accepted, and for sure for Rosh Hashanah. Usually if a person just tries a little harder, he's going to get a breakthrough. Usually that means crying out to Hashem, like he said, v'za'akot v'tfilot. Okay. So we find out, Nimtzah Rosh Hashanah hu tikun hamochin. So all fixing the mind depends on fixing these senses, folks. I can't have kind of certain things going into my head and expect to have a pure, holy mind. Right? And by fixing our brain, we create this aspect, we talked about it before, this spiritual tefillin in the brain itself, that covers, this tefillin is this power or light of the mitzvah on the brain, that helps keep the brain in its pathways, and thought in its pathways. Because tefillin represents the spark of mochin. Now, what does that mean, these sparks? We talk about sparks all over in the Kabbalah. Here, there are different answers, but here the answer is that the ideas strike each other, it creates a spark. Just like two pieces of stone strike each other, it creates a spark, so too ideas create sparks in the mind. And this is one of the ways that we create new insights in Torah, because we take from different places in the Torah and compare them and bring them together. And that causes a third new idea to be born from the two. So this Itnotetzuta Mochin, it sounds like a big, high spiritual, metaphysical concept, the sparking of the brain, but it really means two ideas touching each other and creating something new. And this is the idea of the 10 days of tshuva between Rosh Hashanah and Kippur. And this we also had, remember, we talked with the Arizal taught us about how the Jews were like, in Egypt, were like gold embedded in the slag of the mountain, right? The Jews their souls were embedded in Egypt, but we had to pull that gold out to find that we're really the children of God, and we're not the slaves of Pharaoh, and and that refinement process, the Rebbe compared to gold. Well, here we see that the tshuva is this idea of im totzi yakar mizolel, that if you take the precious out of the cheap, right, this whole process of removing the good from the negative, which we've talked about many times, this is also the idea of teshuvah. Because what we're doing, again, we're separating good and evil. We're saying, I'm not that person that did that evil deed. I did do it, but that's not the real me, right? The real me is a good person. And so I want to pull the real me out of that badness, or whatever it might be, that slag of what we consider are not such good deeds. Okay, so that's the yakar. And since tefillin is also called yakar or precious, so tefillin itself is also representing this idea of the separation of the good and the evil. Shamar vikar, right? We say sason vikar, right? We read it in the Megillah a week or so ago, and we say it also in Havdalah. Elu tefillin, and this idea of yakar is the tefillin, right? Because the tefillin is the ordering of the pathways of the mind, as we've talked to before. That your mind can think very, very many different directions all at once, and you could, end up in trouble. But generally, the Torah has very specific pathways of thought, and that's one of the beauties of learning the Talmud, is because we're learning the way the rabbis think, and hopefully impacting the way they thought on ourselves, so that because there's associative consciousness, which most of us live in, is where I live my day in my mind, going from thing to thing, idea to idea. Oh, I'm hungry, I'll get something to eat. I'm thirsty, I'll get something to drink. Oh, I got to go to work. Oh, where are my keys? Oh, I'm just living, bouncing thought to thought to do the basic things that I need to do. But that's a passive type of living. That's called associative consciousness, where I'm just associating one thing to another, and I get done what I need to get done. Active consciousness is where I make the choices about what I want to think, what I want to feel, when I want to do it. I'm not responding to the environment directly, but rather I'm processing it with my brain first and saying, is this what I want to do now? Proactive is another good word, very good. And this active consciousness actually is a reflection of the power of tefillin. The tefillin gives you the ways of thinking in a healthy, proper way. Okay. The tefillin is created through this idea of the repair of the brain. Okay. שהם נעשים על ידי שמתקנים ומעלים בחינת החיתום בשרו בחינת חותם דקדושה בחינת מוחין דתפילין. Why? Okay, this is a long one. The Rebbe explains to us in a more Kabbalistic way that these tefillin that we're putting on our head and putting in our mind to order our thinking, the mitaknim, they fix, ma'alim, and elevate our brain from hachtim basaro, that the seal in the flesh, which is usually, of course, means the covenant of the Brit. It goes from the level of seal in our basaro, because our first covenant with Hashem, of course, was at 8 days old. We got the Brit. But now we get a new idea of covenant, the hotam de kedusha. What's the seal of holiness? Not flesh. Seal of holiness is, of course, the tefillin, the kedushat mochin tefillin. Right? So tefillin, again, we've had this discussion before. This idea of a leather box with parchment and holy letters written on it. It's an amulet. Many religions in the world have amulets. Some people believe in them, some people don't believe in them, some people are afraid to believe in them. Each person at his level of faith and understanding. The Torah does not let us off easy over here. The Torah expects us to understand that the tefillin is not just a box of leather with parchment and letters. It is a spiritual honing device to draw God's power to you, to draw the Shekhinah down where I need it in my brain, right? So that I can think properly and respond properly like a Jew to the world. So it's not just a physical object. It is a magnet pulling down holiness into the mind. And if you don't believe me, try learning Torah with your tefillin on, and then try learning Torah without tefillin. And I think you might see the difference. And it's a subtle difference, because all the real growth in tshuva and kedusha is the little things. I know in the beginning of tshuva, I don't know about you guys, but when I first started, I was looking for big things. I want fireworks. I want miracles. I needed miracles. Right? But we don't really want to get to a stage where we need miracles, because that means something's not working good. Right? But what we want is to understand that it's the little things that really measure our growth, and we have to be patient with ourselves. We have to pay attention to those little things. And it might be just having a good thought about somebody that you're having problems with. Or it might be just smiling at somebody when you don't really want to smile. Because those little changes change us. And a man becomes his deeds. Right? So I want to bless everybody with a great day and a holy experience of your tefillin, and preparation for Pesach should go well, little by little, not too much, not too fast. Some people already have their houses turned upside down around here. So it should go easy, but it should also be pleasantness and noam. Noam is upper pleasantness. It's like a spiritual pleasantness, even when we're doing things like sweeping and mopping and cleaning and etc. Okay, so we'll look for you all tomorrow. Have a great day. Take care.